So to catch you up, if you haven't seen the other video, you should watch it. But it is a zombie-based curriculum. It's really studying geography, mainly the middle school grades, 5th grade to 8th grade. These standards apply to that through the lens of zombies. It's going to be part narrative, so there's going to be a little short story, well, not a short story, but there will be pieces of stories that follow through the curriculum and follow through the learning to kind of carry the student through different scenarios and why they would need to learn these geographic concepts. And through that, students will kind of do their own, they'll do their own learning, do their own projects, do their own work alongside that story and those scenarios. So it's really just to build interest. I do not expect, and I should say this, I do not expect that a teacher would adopt the entire curriculum for their class and say, I'm going to teach this year as the zombie year, and we're going to teach all the geography to all the students. I think that middle school and the topic of zombies doesn't fit and would not fit to every middle school student. But I do think that there are definitely students, and I'm sure everybody can kind of think of a student in their classroom who's a little bit disengaged, and they might say, hey, why don't you read this story, check out this project, see how it goes, or you spend a little bit more time with them working on that. And it's not a way to pass off other students, it's a way to bring in students and engage them in the same concepts through a more engaging way and a more engaging idea and a far out idea. That's what I'm trying here. I think that anything can be taught applied to the real world. It's a matter of just figuring out what it is, and I think that I'm believing that almost anything, I haven't found anything yet, could be taught through interests, through different interests. And so I'm choosing zombies because I think it's pretty popular, it's pretty engaging, it's hard to engage students, and I enjoy it and it's a lot of fun. I'm choosing middle school geography because that's what I'm most familiar with right now. I would love to do social studies for high school. I teach middle school right now, so that's what I'm going to focus on, part of a personal interest, and just kind of less work for myself because I already know and am really familiar with the 6th grade and middle school social studies. So that's why I'm focusing with that, but I'm totally open to teaching high school standards as well if we get more funding. So, saying that, I believe that this is just kind of an idea, hopefully building toward more ideas of showing that standards can be used to teach standard expectations, but in almost any way possible. I think one of the biggest issues I have with how people think of national standards right now, or even state standards, is to think that it's telling you how to teach. And I think that the standards are really great because it's a reference for what students need to know. Just in case, and I bet most teachers are clear about this, when I say standards, I'm not talking about standardized tests, I'm talking about standard expectations for what students should know. So I definitely think that these standards are great, they're useful, they're great measurements of what students should know. It's great for things like teaching geography, where you really want to know, what do geographers do? What is it that students should know in order to be able to be a geographer and be able to be a really functional citizen understanding geography? So I think these standards are great. I think they're underutilized. I think people get scared that it means you have to teach things a certain way. And so part of this is showing that you can teach standards any way, through any lens, even zombies, and it can be effective. So that's what part of this is, and also I think that I would love to eventually develop a lot of different curriculum resources that are sort of interest-based. As much as I think real-world applications are very important, and I think we can find those, and I think we can push kids toward that, I think it's also great to allow them to pursue their interests and work with what engages them. So yeah, my big kind of idea is that if we can do a zombie-based, full middle school standards-based curriculum, then we can do many other things as well and start developing those and eventually have kind of a menu that students can say, hey, I want to learn this standard through this way. maybe down the road. So I want to talk about actually what this is really going to look like. And so I've been planning and mapping out all of the standards and all of the different elements, and I'm using the standards from the Geography of Life that was printed in 1994. Might sound like it's a bit old, but it is actually the foundation of all of the standards that have come from there in social studies nationally. National Council of Social Studies, the national standards that they put out are based on, and just kind of pulling the headers from the Geography for Life standards that were printed in 1994 and developed over 20 years. They're really awesome. They're great. They explain a lot. They're underutilized. Most states base their standards off of that, so these are really by geographers, by a lot of different geographic societies. They're real standards. They're great, and that's what I'm using to apply. These are the standards for social studies, for geography. They're the Geography for Life one are just for geography, not for entire social studies. So I've been going through those, looking at every element of what the standards are and looking at how those can be taught, not just in the real world, but in the world set in a zombie apocalypse, and what scenarios would be like a real world zombie apocalypse use for these skills, and then how can we set kids into that situation. So through this, I've developed kind of a narrative that walks through, I've got some notes here on my messy desk, that walks through, it's back here. Yeah, that walks through like 5 different sections really. And it sets up some good scenarios for teaching these different standards. There's a variety of them, a whole bunch of them. It's going to start with the narrative. I'm thinking it's going to start at the planning for the outbreak. So it's like they're getting news of a zombie-like outbreak, and it's reaching the community, and you have to help plan in case the outbreak reaches your area. And there's a lot of different geographic activities that they'll be doing and learning through that. That will help set up some of the geographic tools that they'll be using throughout the program, introducing maps and creating maps, reading maps, through kind of understanding how this zombie outbreak is happening. After that, there'll be the outbreak has happened and you're just trying to survive, and there will be many different scenarios where you have to use your skills just to try and survive and find others. It'll be, for example, a good time to enter in learning mental maps, and there's many different scenarios as well. I don't want to go too much into these. I'll give an example of a scenario later with a standard. Then you'd go to finding a place to settle, and you'd start surviving, meeting others. You're trying to decide upon a safe place to settle, using knowledge of resources and finding places to settle. Then you build a community with your group of survivors. You make decisions to build a safe and sustainable community. There's a lot of standards fitting into that. And then planning for the future. This is going to kind of close off the unit, and it's based on what you know about geography, based on your knowledge of the past. Your community makes long-term plans for survival and rebuilding a life, which is very directly related to one of the big standards that's in there, that is planning geographic issues, planning for the future using geographic concepts. So saying that outline, those are all directly based. So the way I'm a big fan of understanding by design or backwards planning, and starting with the standard and designing from there and starting with your objective. So I've started with zombies, geography, and gone from the standards and looked at what are the applications, and then so from there this outline has come up. So it's based on all of these standards and applications and ways to learn the concepts and scenarios. I'll give you an example. National Geography Standard 3 is spatial information on Earth. So how to analyze the spatial organization of people, places, and environments on the Earth's surface. This is probably one of the standards that most geography teachers are familiar with, and it's one that stuck around and shows up a lot. It's a popular one. And standard 3, so like the element of that 3A sort of is to analyze and explain physical and human distribution. And so there's a few different ways that could happen. I'm picturing analyze resource distribution maps to find places to settle. So in that scenario where they're trying to decide where do they want to settle, They would be analyzing how resources are distributed, and finding a place that would actually be sustainable and actually be a good place to settle. They could analyze agricultural locations and relate patterns to climate, topography, and soil. So they're going to have to be thinking about food when they settle a new place, so they would want to take that into account. They'll be pushed to do that. Analyze distribution of urban places and their links to surrounding areas or the suburbs. So when trying to survive and maneuver through different cities, I think it would be great, and students will have to understand different setups. I've got the so I have automatic lights in my room, and as usually happens when I'm working at my desk in the evening, my lights go out. So anyways, what I was saying was that the students would have to, in order to kind of show that they can survive, they would understand cities enough that they would understand different setups of cities, different urban organization setups, whether it's a central area expanding or whether it's different districts. They'll have to use their knowledge to maneuver through and around different communities to avoid like bad situations, mainly zombies. I want to say, because I think I get sort of vague about things like that, about how cities are set up, and I want to say that there's a huge element here of localization, like making this curriculum tied to the community, tied to the local community. So it's sort of like a role-playing game where students will use the area around them and analyze their local area and picture if it happened in their area, if they were actually in their area, they were in that scenario, where would they try to avoid, where would they try to go, analyze how their city is set up, what agricultural areas there are, how they would be able to get out of the city if that was what they would decided. So there's a lot of freedom to this. It's very I'm a big fan of higher order levels of thinking. It's not right or wrong answer. It's a lot of research, analysis, creative thinking, and integrating different ideas. So just to, if I'm vague about what students need to do sometimes, it's because there is open opportunity for them to be really creative with this. But so saying that, this is what the lessons will involve, because it is going to be a very thought out and a very planned curriculum. And I say that because I've been working, as I mentioned in the other video, I've worked with Valve Software, creates amazing video games, great company, love working with them. I've been designing, they're interested in educational stuff, so I've been designing lessons for them that are to use video games and engage students that are interested in video games and the whole engagement of video games, and use that in education. So I designed some units that were standards-based English standards, where students would analyze literary elements in a video game, like setting, plot, and use that same analysis skills but on a video game story. And these lessons, very planned out. I use as resources different curricula, like College Board. I was looking for the book. And this is, I believe in lessons that have lots of resources. I believe in lessons that have many of these things. And I think it's a lot of work to do it, but I think it makes a huge difference when you have them. So some of the things that these lessons or units will include are the actual teacher lesson plans. So that's very important, right? You gotta have clear explanations of how it's going to work for the teachers. Grading rubrics. So for all assessments and kind of all projects and assignments, there will be grading rubrics. This is a thing that I do a huge amount. So grading on a rubric, 1 through 4, 4 being exceeding expectations. So everything will have a grading rubric. I think that's very important. And I think it makes a world of difference for the students to be able to understand what the expectations are for grading and just be really clear on that. I do standards-based grading, so it's all It's all going to be in that area, but then also integrated with some 21st century skills, such as creativity and communication, collaboration, technology uses. There'll be very clear learning objectives. I think with anything, when you start to involve kind of a fun or crazy idea, it's so important to have very clear objectives, definitely standards based, where if someone says, why are you doing this fun activity? Is it just for fun? Or this looks fun, but are they learning anything? Having those learning objectives very clear for every single lesson is so important. So those will definitely be included, which I think makes a big difference. It'll be very clear. Student language, teacher language, very important to get out there. Group-worthy tasks, group work, very important, but I think it's only effective if it's done right. Bad group work is worse than no group work, but excellent group work is going to be very valuable. So it's really important to have group-worthy tasks. So included in that, when there is something that if you have multiple students working on it, or if you even want to just engage some other students in this activity for a little while, there will be group-worthy tasks where everyone is accountable for the group and accountable individually. There are assessments, full line of assessments. I feel like I'm selling a car or something, but there will be pre, post, and formative assessments. It's so important to have pre-assessments, not just to see where students are at, but to be able to show where they've gone and that they've learned. And I know whenever I do something, especially if it's something fun and it looks exciting, and students might say, oh yeah, I already knew that before, or it's so engaging that they don't realize that they actually learned a real lot. It's really nice to be able to break out those pre-assessments and show them or their parents or somebody in the district and say, this is what they knew about geography before, this is what they knew about this specific objective or standard, this is what they can do now. They might not have known that they learned so much, but they actually did. So it's really, you got to be data driven, especially with something crazy like this. Project-based options and creative outlet options. So that's very important. I teach at a project-based school. We are huge into project-based learning. It's great. So as much as I can, I will integrate project-based learning, project-based objectives that I think it's not just ones that would fit with this scenario of zombie apocalypse, but also something that if they want to step out into the real world a little bit, something that is actually real world based, because it's very important with project-based learning not just to have some fun simulation, but actually have something that can actually be effective. So we'll integrate some of the real world into that as well. Special education accommodations. The school I teach at has 30% population of special education, and in one of my classes, half the students are special education. So having accommodations to assist special education students, I think, is very important, and I think that anyone in designing curriculum should really take that into account. And I think they've got to be effective. They can't just be cheesy simplifications. They need to really meet the same objectives, but really assist people when they need it. So as much as I can, there's going to be special education accommodations expected to be included in there. Real life connections. Every single unit or every single lesson will have back to reality, because I think that's so important that students understand when they would really use something. So it's fun to think, when would you use this in a zombie apocalypse? And they might be able to go just on their own from I would use this in a zombie apocalypse to I would use this in the real world. But you can't just leave that up to them. So there will be, for each section, an example of this standard, this lesson, this idea, this concept that you learned. This is how you used it in the zombie apocalypse. This is how people use it in the real world, and this is why it's important. Because it really is important, because it's in the real world in the first place. Further reading and learning provide more information for each unit about where people could learn more about it, where they could extend their learning. Break apart lessons to be used on their own. I picture that these units would be, you would be able to just pull out a piece. It could have enough little intro that somebody could just spend their learning just on that standard in the zombie apocalypse. They don't need to go through from beginning to end. As much as it would all connect and be a great narrative, someone could pick out a piece in the middle and just do that scenario. So that's the only way that I think it could really be effective, because nobody's going to adopt the whole thing right away. If you do, more power to you. Multimodal options. So I think this is important, and this Some of this is dependent on if I get more funding. I would love to include more video narration, video elements that go along with the narrative and kind of get students interested. I would love to include even some audio storytelling here and there. I would love to include an online element where not so much of a game, but where people could contribute different things, especially if it's locally based, and start building kind of a network around the world or around the country of information that students have been researching. So definitely want to try and bring in as much different modes of learning as I can, different modes of presenting information. Illustrations, this is definitely one of the first things that money is being spent on, is illustrations to go along with the resources. I think it'll be a great assistance to learning, and I think it'll make a really interesting set of resources, and it can be pretty fun. Primary sources and texts. So definitely this is one of the research things that I'm definitely going to be working on quite a bit, is that finding actual primary sources, finding actual maps, finding actual government data, finding actual real world things to make this narrative more realistic and to make the learning more realistic as well. So I think that will be really exciting. Community connections, I talked about that a little bit. So there will be specific ways that students can connect to the community, specific objectives that they will have that will vary depending on what community you're in, where they'll actually be learning about their local community. And I think that will be very engaging, very important. And also student handouts, of course. It's all going in their student handouts. Different setups for reflection, KWLs, all sorts of different strategies, as much as I can. Where strategies are maybe belong to another curriculum, I would definitely point out when things could be used in, but they might not be included by me. So definitely pointing to different strategies, discussions, things to activate student learning as much as I can will be in there. And then also maybe an appendix, or maybe it will be built in throughout, but something to support the organization of a student portfolio, so that if somebody was going through a large amount of this curriculum, the student could keep a portfolio. And even it is possible, and I think it would be a great use of the system or the curriculum to purchase this and go through it by yourself, or go through it outside of school. I think that's totally acceptable. Adults could do it too. And keeping a portfolio could be pretty fun. You would have almost a pretty deep story that's really localized and personalized to your experience in the zombie apocalypse. I don't know if there's more that I wanted to talk about. I think this has been talking forever. Maybe I can edit this down. There's a lot more, but that's what I have notes on. If you have any questions, if you've been watching this far, definitely contact me. I can talk forever about this sort of stuff. I can answer any questions. And it's really late right now. It's a school night. It's in the evening. So good luck to everybody. Have a good school day tomorrow. Fund, share, send me any questions, get involved. Definitely want feedback to make this the best thing that it can possibly be. And I appreciate your listening to all of this. Thank you.